track
Yeah,
thing, and
that was a ridiculous sideshow.
yeah, and like that is really kind of what we saw, and that is the yeah, that is the interesting, and that is the interesting the side of the thing, because we do have a very fractured situation, and I guess the question now is like, what is the reaction? What's the appropriate like tack to take in response to this? And there has been interesting. We do
Yeah,
hear that Pence is said to oppose invoking the 25th Amendment to strip Trump of his duties. We've heard that been
yeah.
like whispering about by cabinet officials. And
I can
what's your take
understand
on
that
that?
though.
What?
I, what is the guy's got 13 days left, right? He's fairly isolated by way of communication by technology companies. That's they've been holding that one in their back pocket for a long time. Um, Not to say that he will not communicate another way. He'll leave. He'll go to some other platform, right? But because there are almost 80 million people who voted for the guy. Now, yeah, a lot of people. Listen, I voted for him, but these voting, unfortunately, is a binary affair. It's very difficult for me to look at Joe Biden aligning himself the way he did with people on the far left and think that that's okay with me, that the future of the country is okay in those hands. I knew that the future of the country was already in say barely stable person's hands. I'm betting that the president himself, it's like a fish living in water. Like, where's the water? A fish doesn't know what water is, but it's all around him. Like, Donald Trump doesn't know what a bully pulpit is because he lives in it, and he's clearly got this all to himself. This inciting crowds to riot, but no other people incite crowds to riot. I mean, I'm not. Human beings are flawed and faulty, and they make terrible mistakes, and idiots get elected all the time. That's just the law of large numbers. There are lots of idiots, so some idiots will get elected. I don't think Donald Trump even foresaw that he could create something like this. Maybe he's a megalomaniac. I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think like
But
he wasn't looking at what happened in the Capitol yesterday with like shock and horror, you know. But again, I don't really see how much is like there's going to be done with the 25th Amendment being put in there, because from what it seems like,
yeah, I don't
the
think
reporting
that's
on this,
legitimate.
like the reporting on this, like seems to be that Mike Pence is pretty much like Mike Pence was behind sending in the National Guard. Like Trump didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to send in the National Guard, and Mike Pence was just like, yeah, just let's get this over with. And yeah, I don't know what his political ambitions are for the future, but one thing's for sure, it certainly seems like there is a large part of the country who just does not, just really does not acknowledge that Biden is legitimately elected as president. Do you think
That's
that's a little
unfortunate.
overstated? Do you think it's a little overstated, or?
No, I think it's unfortunate. No, no, no. When you say, sorry, I cut out for a second. I didn't hear the last thing you said.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just like it was a little. Do you think that the lack of faith in Biden being elected is overstated in the Republican Party?
Hmm. Uh, Listen, I can only speak for myself as someone who is like center right. Uh, there's a lot not to trust in, and I'm not talking about the results. I'm not talking about. I think a lot of people, as I'm trying to understand it, a lot of people are a little annoyed about some legitimate gripes that won't change an election, but they are legitimate gripes. You got in Pennsylvania, you've got the Supreme Court overruling a legislature. That ought to go to trial. That ought to see a judge. You have consent decrees between organizations run by the first power denier, Stacey Abrams, that a state legislature is supposed to make, not a Secretary of State of the state of Georgia. Like, there are some legitimate gripes that people have out there that have gone unanswered. It wouldn't have mattered as far as the vote count, whatever. But it's, we are supposed to live in a country with due process. And I think until someone legitimately acknowledges that there are reasonable people who have legitimate gripes, no one is going to trust the Biden administration. No Republicans are going to, even moderate Republicans are going to, look askance at this and say, you're not acknowledging a fact. Like, you're just not acknowledging, real, legitimate grievances. And that's not the way to win support from people who are even willing to lend some support. I find myself praying now that Joe Biden lives 4 years, because
that's a turn I did not see
Kamala Harris
coming.
Yeah, Kamala Harris scares the bejesus out of me. Okay, I know Joe Biden's history. Okay, although I think he made some decisions for convenience sake in the last few years. I'm hoping that the guts of the guy are still there.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, he's a moderate Republican
and will be a moderator. What's that?
Like, in the end, he is like very similar to like a very almost center right politician. Like, if you look at what he's done.
Yes, agreed. And I think most people in the country can live with that. I think a lot of the the people on the right who feel disenfranchised are the people who've been told to shut up and take it.
Well, I think the dangerous thing that they've done is, like, the characterization that so many people have just been given is it's either Trump or it's the apocalypse, and like Joe Biden is like the furthest thing from the apocalypse, and that is like such a like that's what leads to such like violence and such anger. And I mean, in terms of like gripes of the election, I mean, it's definitely like a weird year with coronavirus and all that stuff. But if you look at like those are like partisan like people who I don't know exactly what the dispute was in like the Pennsylvania legislature, but like I don't know what was it something to do with like when they counted the mail-in ballots or?
Yeah, it was extending the count for the mail-in ballots by I think it was like 5 days.
And the state legislature didn't want to do it, and the Supreme Court overruled them, or the other way?
The state legislature, it should have been up to the state legislature. And in the suit, the Supreme Court, the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania said, yeah, we'll just count the votes for longer. And the legislature said, we're not interested in that. They took it to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And then the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania said, nah, we could just count for 5 more days, even though it says
that seems like due process.
The election law in Pennsylvania at some point
that's where the Supreme Court has to go.
To the rule of law somewhere.
What was the justification from is the Supreme Court like? How did they choose the Supreme Court? And I'm interested to know that. It's
elected. They're elected, so it's a majority Democrat Supreme Court.
And if it went to the majority Republican Supreme Court, it could have been a different way. In the United States Supreme Court,
it would have gone back to what the legislature has declared. The state's self-governing body said you count for this many days and you don't count after this, and then a judge says, "No, we just keep counting."
I mean,
And I think these are the things that people are mad at. Okay, would they have mattered? No, but yeah, what? Same thing with rioters. I don't care who you are and what you're rioting for. If you violate federal property, if you violate someone's private property, you're subject to the consequences. The full might of the law.
But there's a fair amount of
doing that.
There's a fair amount of like, oh, there's a problem with the Pennsylvania legislature, but there's also a large amount of like Hugo Chavez is hiding ballots for Biden. Like, they're like that is
that's tough. I don't know where those people went off the rails. I mean, they're Lynn Wood.
Yeah,
turned out to be a nutcase.
And Sidney Powell and
Sidney Powell's just great as an attorney. For Mike Flynn, okay, you did your job. Just stay in your lane. I think there's enough disarray right now in both parties that there are a lot of people power grabbing and posturing, and they're just trying to collect. They're just trying to get attention and collect the following somehow, any way they can. And because information is so democratized now, more or less.
Very siloed.
People have but it's anybody can become a broadcaster. Anyone can become a podcaster. Anyone can become anything.
Don't I know it?
So if you're in the, if you've already got some national attention, you have a platform from which to speak. I mean, just you can collect as many people as you like by having them agree with you. And I do believe, I forget what they call it. It was the Heisenberg principle. It's like an activity that's observed changes the activity. So that's what's happening. Like, it's like the Truman Show. People are out there, look at me. And in order to get people to look at you, you have to start changing what you believe, changing what you say, adhering to something different. And that is it's happened. It's just human nature, I think.
I really do think that's like a lot of these, like, behind a lot of like what people like Hawley and like Cruz and all those people who aren't like really, they're clearly like thinking about other things as well and trying to posture themselves and get ready, and that really just speaks to it. Like the fact that like Kelly Loeffler just had a Senate race where she thought it would be beneficial to her to like get caught taking pictures with like the KKK and like some weird stuff like that, and that was like and David Perdue like saying all these like insulting things about like Kamala or whatever, like that, like turning up that just a little bit, like that just does kind of seem it like the Republican base definitely, and by extension the Democratic base, is like really kind of at a fever pitch right now, and I just don't see how that gets taken down. I don't see how that gets taken down or not.
I know.
And
they are not playing the same game as you or me. Okay, I mean, me speaking as a father of kids who I'd like to see successful in life. I have a different agenda. I just want a stable economy. I want there to be an economic future. I'd like everyone's rights respected. I don't want some people to have more rights than other people. I just don't understand how. So that's what I mean. So, I'm of the belief that there really is, whatever comes out of this, I think a larger center, a more vocal center will emerge, especially because the margins are so narrow in the House right now, right? There are only a handful of people that can swing any vote. So I think you're going to
be a lot of opportunities for a lot of people
crossing party lines to preserve, what people would imagine is, the American experiment, freedom of speech, right to work, all of these things.
I definitely see like
happen.
I definitely see some bipartisan cooperation on getting Trump out. That's for sure. But in terms of, like, yeah,